All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chair. We are at
Good morning.
9:30 and we do have quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and get started just to do our brief introduction. So we do currently have quorum. Missing from the meeting at this time is Ms. McFarlane, Ms. O'Reilly, and Mr. Smith. I do not see them here currently. Joining us from staff are Jennifer Campbell, Director of Heritage Services, Philip Perrell, Intermediate Planner with Heritage, Alex Rouse-Thompson, Planner for Heritage, Brandon Forrest, Director of Business, Real Estate, and Environment, and Heather Scranage is our Business Support Manager. Ian Sullivan is acting as host this morning, and I'm Elizabeth Fawcett, Clerk for Heritage Kingston. We do have 2 or 3 members of the public here who are to speak to the applications, and we don't have any in the gallery at this time. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you to get us started.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So welcome. As we say, we are missing Jane McFarlane, Ted Smith, and we have apologies from Janine O'Reilly. You have an agenda. Do I have any amendments to that agenda? I haven't seen any, I don't believe. Does anybody have anything at all? Notice that Jane McFarlane is now with us. Seeing none, then looking for a motion to approve the agenda as printed. Councillor Oosterhoff, seconded by Jennifer Demeter. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favour? Those opposed? And that is carried by all who are here. Thank you. The confirmation of the minutes of December the 15th, 2021. I have had no notes of errors or omissions in these minutes. Jane, is that a motion to approve or a comment? You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, just a comment. I sent a minor change into the clerk, and I believe she's changed it. So.
Oh, okay. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. It was just some edits that were minor in nature.
Yep, okay, thank you. So the printed version is the correct one. Looking for a mover to approve those minutes. Jane McFarlane, seconded by Jennifer. Any discussion on them at all? If not, then if those voting in favour of approving the minutes of December 15 can raise your hand, please. And I think I see all hands there, so that will be carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. And again, if this comes up during the meeting and you realise, please say so. I will at this point state that in the Cataraqui United Church, I do not have a pecuniary interest, but I certainly have been consulted on that and may get mentioned during the discussion. Presentations, delegations and briefings, I see nothing. Going on to business, I believe there is nothing there until we get to stat business. Unless anything late has developed. Okay, so we are down to 974 Sydenham Road, Cataraqui Anglican Church. Philip, I believe that's you.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is indeed myself.
Good, welcome.
Hello there. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Hopefully the snow, everybody, was not too much for everyone there in the last couple of days. Through you, Mr. Chair, we're going to be presenting 974 Sydenham Road, also known as Christ Church. This is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and this is an application for alteration, specifically of the railings and the stairs on the south entrance of the property. Next slide, please. The subject property is on the east side of Sydenham Road, just north of Princess Street. The property abuts the Cataraqui Cemetery and is nearly opposite the Cataraqui United Church. Next slide, please. So these are some important views of the area that is going to be altered property. The top picture shows the existing south entrance with the stairs and railing in its entire context. And the bottom 2 pictures show the south facing the street and the railings from different areas of the road. Next slide, please. This property is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act through bylaw 2018-25. The property is designated for its physical, design, historical, associative, and its contextual value. The majority limestone church was built in 1869 in Gothic Revival style. The south side wall includes a pair of single-pointed arch windows flanking a projected enclosed stone entrance porch located midway along the wall with a gable roof. The south wall of the porch is projected vertically to form a parapet with carbel stones below the low angles of the parapet and buttresses on each side of the doorway. As the property is built on a natural high point of land, has distinctive architecture, and is associated cemetery represents a traditional grid pattern, it has become a landmark along Sydenham Road. Some of the relevant cultural heritage attributes for this application are its one-story Gothic Revival limestone church with a 4-story limestone tower in western addition. The south-facing side wall includes pointed arch windows flanking the projected enclosed stone entrance porch with a gable roof, parapet with corbel stones below, and buttresses on each side of the doorway. The small pointed arch window with stained glass on each of its side walls of the south wall porch, and a pointed arch stained glass transom over a pair of vertical board doors, which have original iron hardware. The visibility and legibility of these attributes affect Sydenham Road. Next slide, please. So these are the two parts of the proposal, the stair and rail replacement. Neither are designated features, and we're going to look at the railings first. The top two left-handed pictures show the existing railings and stairs and their decay. And the bottom right shows the concrete steps facing the east on the church, on Christ Church, which have patinaed in more of a yellowish gray color. The bottom two pictures show the use of concrete steps and another designated property. My apologies, we're going to be looking at the stairs first, not the railings. I misspoke earlier. Concrete is a common material used for designated churches around Kingston, and if appropriately designated or designed, does not negatively impact the heritage attributes of the property. The concrete for Christ Church is to be a darker hue of gray to better blend with the limestone to avoid a similar yellowish color result, like on the eastern part of the church that exists today. Building masonry is preserved by following the advice of Mr. Bruce Downey, who was consulted on this file, who recommends the use of a 1-inch waterproof fiber board between the concrete steps and the masonry walls, which will be held together with bond breaker. This should allow the concrete and church walls to settle independently and minimize moisture transfer and protect the masonry. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about the railings. The pictures to the left are of Christ Church, which show the existing railings along with their attachment points in the masonry. The pictures to the right are of Bethel Church, which show a very similar design to the proposed railing system, but with 2 masonry attachment points where the Christ Church is only proposing 1. The proposal to add new railing conserves the heritage attributes of the building by using the existing masonry penetrations to secure the proposed railings, which is consistent with the city's masonry policy. The simple railing design, like that is in use at Bethel Church, should further emphasize the more interesting and designated features of this south entrance/exit. Next slide, please. As we can see here, we have our recommendations here for this file that were included in the report. And next slide, we have our further conditions here. Importantly, the drawings for the building permit are going to be circulated to staff, and we're going to be reviewing any changes there and any minor deviations that occur. Will have to be consistent with the intent of this policy. Thank you very much, and I'm open for any questions or concerns if anyone has right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Phil, committee members, questions, comments? Seeing none. Members of the public? And I'm not sure we have members of the public as such. I know we have Peter Ginn here.
Mr. Chair, we don't have any members of the public in the gallery. However, Mr. Ginn is here in case he wanted to speak to the item.
Yep, so Peter, if you want to speak, wave. If not, I look for, oh yes, Peter, comments?
No comments to make. You know, Phil and I have been working on this, and I think we've come to some consensus as to how to deal with it.
Thank you very much. So we go on to looking for a mover and a seconder. get it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Doherty, seconded by Jennifer. Comments, questions, further discussion? Don Taylor.
Yes, I think the application is fine and should go ahead, but I think the committee should try to keep it in mind that we really would prefer to continue with stone steps on buildings such as this. And there are many, many buildings, not just churches, but many other buildings in Kingston that originally used stone steps, and those steps need repair. And they can be repaired, particularly if they're sort of checked and maintained over the years at reasonable rates. So let's not give up the issue of whether we can just go ahead and replace limestone steps with concrete. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments? Seeing none then, motion moved by Councillor Doherty, seconded by Jennifer. Those in favour, if you can raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I see all voting there in favour, those against. And that motion is carried. So thank you, Phil. Thank you, Mr. Ginn, for coming. And good luck with that project. We move on to 225 Johnson Street.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will be
Yes.
filling in for Ryan because he is away currently, so I will be presenting on his behalf.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, this application under the Ontario Heritage Act is for demolition of a garage on the subject property and the subsequent erection of a new building on a new lot in its place. The proposal was recently reviewed through a heritage pre-application, file F32-376-2021 at the November 17th, 2021 Heritage Kingston meeting. Next slide, please. The subject property is on the north side of Johnson Street and is mid-block between Sydenham and Clergy Streets. Next slide, please. The property contains a 2.5-story dwelling, a brick dwelling built in 1913, and a 1-story 2-car garage built in the mid to late 1970s. Next slide, please. These photos show the existing building and its surrounding context, looking northeast and looking northwest. Right as you can see in the left-hand picture where that tree is going to go, or that tree is, that's where the new building is expected to be. Next slide, please. Designated under Part 5, Section 41 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. This property is rated as contributing to the district, and the cultural heritage value includes 1913 brick dwelling, high limestone foundation, and full height bay window projection. In the mid 1970s, the single-story double garage was erected, and it is not noted as a heritage attribute. Next slide, please. We can see the design concept plans here. They're quite similar to the original one with some key modifications, which we'll go over in just a moment. The proposal seeks to remove this 1-story garage and repair any damage to the wall of the building as is required. The Heritage Conservation District plan notes that the garage is to be photographed inside and outside prior to removal. The building erected in its place is to be a 4-unit, 2-story dwelling, clad in a brick veneer on the front elevation and horizontal wood clapboard siding on the rears and sides and rear. The roof will be a dark gray standing seam profile with metal wood fascia. The front on Johnson Street elevation will include a series of metal-clad wood sash windows on both levels and glazed doors. The second story will include a shallow black metal Juliet-style balcony with square pickets. In alignment with Section 7.4 of the HCD plan, the new building will remove the ability for front yard parking. The applicant site plan, which you can see further on Exhibit C, notes that the proposal for additional landscaping includes street trees in the front yard. The rear yard is currently graded and has gravel for parking and abuts a city-owned laneway. The applicants propose to landscape the rear yard in order to provide additional amenity space / open space and to formalize parking behind the laneway or from the laneway behind the building. The following renderings will provide further context for these design decisions. Next slide, please. The building in question is the one in between the two side buildings there. When creating a new building in the HCD, a significant impact is possible on the streetscape. So this proposal tries to address this concern in the following ways: by fitting in with adjacent properties, by maintaining the street wall, by setting back slightly behind the projecting bays and porches of the existing buildings to maintain the prominence of the two adjacent buildings, by having a lower profile when viewed from the street due to its lower height, and having a similar massing and depth when compared to the two adjacent buildings. Its total and eave height will not exceed the ridge line of the abutting buildings, and will use appropriate materials for construction like stone, brick, wood clapboard, and fiber cement board. Next slide, please. Section 6.2.6 of the HCD plan discourages large areas of new glazing visible to the street on a new residential development, such as being proposed for this development. While large windows are not uncommon in the district, the purpose of this policy is to discourage the kind of large plate glass windows more commonly found in mid to late 20th century developments, an example of which can be seen on the second floor window over the veranda on the subject dwelling. The applicants are trying to balance current Ontario building code requirements for natural lighting / ventilation into a residential unit against the limitation on openings, which is a maximum of 7 for fire safety reasons adjacent to existing buildings. Following the consultation compared to Kingston in the pre-application process and conversations with staff, applicants have amended their plans to include a series of 2/2 hung sash windows for the second and first floor units facing Johnson Street, and a single sash window over the door to the upper unit. These simulated divided light windows will help break up the amount of glazing along this elevation, as will the second floor metal balcony. The windows can be a variety of styles, provided that where the simulated lights are proposed, muntin bars need to be located on the exterior of the glass. Windows facing the public realm on Johnson Street elevation are to be metal-clad wood sash windows with 2/2 glazing pattern with muntin bars on the exterior. Windows throughout the other elevations will be a variety of casement, fixed, awning windows with similar glazing patterns and colored to match. The new building will be designed to be compatible in terms of its materiality, roof profile, and window design, yet subordinate to the flanking heritage buildings in terms of its height and width, especially when viewed from Johnson Street. The modern arrangement of windows and doors and the overall building design will provide a clear indication of its recent addition to the district. Next slide, please. So we can see here, we have our recommendations here for the demolition in the new building. Next slide, please. As noted prior, there's some flexibility built into this regarding what kind of windows, but the specification of having simulated divided lights and exterior muntin bars will continue. And this includes the same for using partially glazed doors on Johnson Street. As always, all of these will need to be submitted to heritage planning staff prior to installation for approval. And with that, I'll return it to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much, Philip. Members of the committee, can you please confirm that your dash comments have been correctly reported? Wave to me if it's wrong. Oh, yours is okay. I was going to say wave to me if it's wrong, sorry. Okay, looking good there. Members of the public, do we have anybody or agents to speak on this one at this point?
Mr. Chair, we still don't have any members of the public in the gallery. However,
Okay.
I believe Mr. Bigerman is on this file in case he had anything that he wanted to add.
Okay, Mr. Bigerman, do you want to add anything at all?
That was very well presented. I'm not sure I could add anything that would further that.
No, okay, thank you very much indeed then, Todd. Committee members, questions? Don Taylor.
Just a comment, condition 4 suggests that the front doors could be partially glazed instead of fully glazed. And I think that's important. I think the point is residential doors are typically not glazed from bottom to top. Just the top half of the door would be much more appropriate in a residential area. So I hope the applicants will look carefully at that condition. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments? Don Mitchell, is that a hand up? No, okay. It's difficult to see on the little picture, sorry. Good, okay, in that case, final chance for any comments. And I suspect that you've all had your say. We've gone through a review originally on this and again today. So I look for a motion to move and second. And please note, as Phil pointed out, the motion is sort of in two parts. Firstly, the demolition of the garage, and then secondly, the construction of a replacement of the garage. So looking for a mover for that motion, moved by Don Mitchell, seconded by Paul Benfield. I saw first, thank you. Any further discussion on that? And seeing none, I would ask those of you in favor of the motion to raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I see everybody present voting in favor and therefore nobody voting against, and declare that motion carried. Thank you, Todd, for all the effort that you've got into that, and Phil for taking that file over. And we move on to
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
777,
what's the address?
Wellington Street, Mr. Chair.
Wellington, that's right. Yeah, sorry. And it's Alex, I believe, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes. Good morning,
good.
everybody. All right, we're on a roll so far. This is a smooth morning, so hopefully we can keep it going here.
Don't you dare do anything. That's right.
I'm really excited about this application. Hopefully everyone else is too. So this is an application for alteration under Section 42 in the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. The approval is to rebuild a 2-story front porch in like-for-like design, detailing, and materials at 7 Wellington Street. Next slide, please. So 7 Wellington is located on the southeast side of Wellington Street between Lower Union Street and West Street, just close by to City Park. Next slide, please. So the property contains a 2.5-story red brick Victorian residence that was constructed circa 1879. And as you can see, the 2-story front porch on the front facade is the subject of this application. Next slide, please. So again, this property is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Old Sydenham HCD. It is rated as significant to the district. And in fact, the property inventory form notes that it complements the streetscape in terms of its design, composition, massing, and setback. It has many cultural heritage attributes that support this significance. But particularly if we look to the third bullet point, which says the projecting inner bay with entranceway with wood porch with tapering wood pillars on square wood bases with recessed panels. So essentially, here's where we see that the 2-story front porch is indeed noted as a heritage attribute of the property. Next slide, please. So staff visited the site in early December, and the porch certainly appears to be in a deteriorating state of repair. There are many areas exhibiting serious rot and decay, as you can see on the screen in front of you. The porch appears to have had previous repairs over its lifespan. And I noted some sort of inconsistencies in terms of its design. For example, sort of subtle differences in the column bases in regards to the front of the porch versus the columns at the rear. So I think over time it has had lots of, good repairs using wood and making a good effort, but certainly some have failed maybe due to not as ideal quality of wood, perhaps. So in 2017, there was an approval to repair and repaint this porch. And according to the owners, this work was carried out, including the installation of a new roof. Sorry, they did the painting, the scraping. I don't think the new roof membrane went on at the time, but it was approved. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see the plans for the rebuild of the porch. And basically the proposal is to rebuild the porch using the existing wooden components that are in fair to good condition. and the rest of it will be rebuilt in new wood. So section 4.3.4 of the district plan provides the conservation guidance for porches and verandas. This section advises to avoid fiberglass or plastic replicas of wooden details unless there are no other reasonable options. So to confirm, the entire porch will be constructed of wood. The only exception to this is the upper deck, which will be constructed with plywood and covered with Duradeck waterproofing in a warm gray color. So basically, this is a vinyl waterproof membrane for flat roofs. Given the challenges of waterproofing flat roofs and the desire to really well protect this newly reconstructed porch, this seems like a reasonable approach, particularly given that it will not be readily visible from the public realm. Next slide, please. So section 4.3.4 also advises that if a porch or veranda is being restored or replicated, to do so only after finding documentary evidence of the original appearance. Since such exterior elements deteriorate more quickly due to exposure of the elements, decisions may need to be made as to which of these several earlier versions of the structure should be the model for the proposed work. So it's worth noting here that the design of the rebuilt porch is going to be based on the existing porch. However, staff have advised the applicant and owner that the rear columns, so the ones against the brick house, appear to be the earliest iteration of the design and suitable. Additionally, heritage planning staff suggested perhaps the removal of the lattice on the, let me get this right, on the northeast elevation oh no. Am I back?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened, but my screens just went black. It was pretty eerie. Okay, good, I'm still here. So one of the options here is to remove that painted white diamond lattice that currently exists and instead replace it with a new replica of a handrail, which is most likely to have been the original design. So that has been included as a condition of the approval. Let's move to the next slide, please. So lastly, the district plan advises that original versions of these elements should be retained and that removal or substantial alteration should be avoided. So in this case, there are structural elements that need to be replaced, such as columns, joist decking, as well as areas of serious rot and decay. So a lot of portions of this porch do need to be replaced. However, the proposal does include the salvage and reuse of some sound components. So on the screen, you'll see some areas that are highlighted in red. These are parts of the porch that are in good condition, are proposed to be reused in the rebuild. And the part that I'm particularly pleased with is you'll see that sort of interesting detailing on the frieze there on the right-hand side of the screen, which happens to match the detailing on the projecting bay window adjacent. And so these portions of the porch, which are in good condition and most certainly are original to its construction, will be reused, which I'm very pleased about. So in summary, the proposal to rebuild the porch with the same materiality, design, and detailing, and the reuse of sound existing wood components will conserve the historic porch, which is a heritage attribute of the property, thereby conserving the heritage character and value of the district. Lastly, the proposal supports the goal for heritage buildings in section 2.5.2, which is to conserve and enhance the existing built heritage resources and to protect them from inappropriate changes or demolition. So with all that being said, if we move to the next slide, there is a recommendation to support the proposal, including a number of conditions that follow on to the next slide. And I'll end my presentation there. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you very much, Alex. Firstly, members, can you confirm that your dash comments were correctly recorded? If any problems, let me know. Okay. Members of the public, I believe we still have none, unless there are others, Madam Clerk, who wish to make comments.
Mr. Chair, we still do have no members in the gallery, and I do believe that the applicants were unable to be here this morning.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee members, questions, comments? Don Taylor?
Yes, Alex, you, I'm sure, realize that the original porch probably had the steps in the center. And at some point they were moved around the side. And it would certainly, from a heritage point of view, it would be certainly more desirable to return to presumably the original configuration. And I noticed there that I think you commented that the owners were reluctant to do that because that would require getting an encroachment permit. But as I read the documentation, they will need an encroachment permit anyway. So I really think that there's a good case for encouraging the applicants to reconsider that. And along with it, that has a number of advantages as along with the heritage appearance. It should be less expensive because less foundation work and less floor area, and it'll provide some space to park that motorcycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll just clarify. So that certainly an encroachment permit is required. It's not the only requirement, though. If they were to build the porch back to its original configuration, they'd need to go through a minor variance application, which is a requirement under the Planning Act. So that's about $2,700 plus a few months of time. So it is a bit of a deterrent. It's one of these situations we have where the property is so close to the property line. And it's hard to encourage people to go through that process, unfortunately, when they have an existing situation that they're comfortable with. And after further digging, because I fully agree with Mr. Taylor, and I was very encouraging from the get-go to get them back to that original configuration. I was very excited until I sort of stumbled into the minor variance issue. And also under further investigation, it turns out that their utilities pop up sort of in that central location from underneath the porch. So it would require a little bit of extra work as well to move all those. So unfortunately, the owners weren't terribly keen on the extra time and expense to revert to that design, but I appreciate the comment, and it's a great suggestion.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Alex. Other comments? I think we've heard the concerns about the city property line being so close to a lot of these properties before. Seeing none, then you get a chance to make final comments. And seeing down there, then I would look for a mover and a seconder for the alteration, the two parts of the alteration with the 8 conditions that are printed in your agenda. Jennifer Demeter, and seconded by Jolinka. Thank you very much. Last thoughts on this? Seeing none, then I'll call the question. Those in favour of approving the recommendation as printed, please raise your hands. And I see all the hands up, so that is nobody voting against and 9 in favour. Thank you very, very much, Alex, for that. See, it worked just fine. We're on a roll today. And we move on to 752 King Street. And I believe, Jennifer, you're going to look at after this one.
I am, thank you, and through you, and good morning, everyone. Ryan had been circulating and communicating on this file, but as has been shared, Ryan is away today, so I was happy to step in and just offer some very quick framing slides to get us into any discussion on this proposed heritage easement agreement. So the property is 752 King Street West, and this is the provincial heritage property or lands of provincial significance as part of Part 4 designation as well under the Ontario Heritage Act. And this associates largely with the asylum complex that most of us know as Rockwood. Next slide, please. So the heritage easement agreement that is drafted in front of you today for any comments or consultation feedback is to deal with the subject property as identified in the map in front of you. This property is close to King Street. It abuts onto King Street, and the intent for the province is to transfer this property to the Homes for Heroes Foundation to allow them to develop a small tiny home complex for veterans. Next slide, please. It is before Heritage Kingston as part of this heritage easement agreement consideration because it is on a property of provincial heritage significance, and as such requires that the guidelines for the province are followed in the ability to transfer and essentially take this property out of provincial control and move it then into private ownership. And one of the requests then from the province or requirements for this transfer is that there be statutory heritage considerations on the property. And they are looking specifically for a heritage easement agreement. And so looking at the designation that pre-exists on the asylum complex itself, we do identify that there are some cultural heritage attributes in the subject location, or the property is included within those attribute considerations. So these include landscape elements and particularly circulation patterns. There's a typo on the slide and I do apologize for that. That did historically contribute to understanding the life at the asylum and also those landscape interactions that would have occurred at that time and in the period since. The Heritage Easement Agreement certainly speaks to these landscape and circulation considerations. But one thing that in particular it notes is that this is a significantly distant portion of the property from the core aspects or elements of the designation and the heritage, the built heritage attributes and considerations. And as such, the heritage impacts here are quite low, provided we see that there is some continued understanding of those landscape elements and circulation patterns in the intended development. Next slide, please. So just here is a survey document just showing us again the parcel that we're looking at. Again, would be on King Street as a face, but then have access on the adjacent road as well. Next slide, please. Homes for Heroes Foundation does not have yet detailed plans to submit for the proposed development, and certainly this will have to go through other planning approval processes, including site plan control as well as building. And those are noted both in the technical comments in the report, but also noted in the body of the discussion as well. As part of the Heritage Easement Agreement, we have specified that if there is deviation from what has been understood to be the intended development, a series of 20 tiny homes, single story, with this sort of circulation pattern as demonstrated here, at least in the concept plan. So if we were to see significant deviation from this approval, we would be bringing this back forward through essentially a Part 4 consideration process. And the Heritage Easement Agreement terms would be somewhat set aside, where that more traditional process would be followed. If the concept does come in as intended, we have no reason to think that it wouldn't. It's very clear what the intent on this property is. Then the Heritage Easement Agreement does allow for staff to review, to consult with Heritage Committee at discretion, and to make approvals on the proposal, assuming that it meets all of the agreed to plans and concepts for heritage within the Heritage Easement Agreement. Next slide, please. So the recommendation you have before you is on the screen at present. I did also just want to share before we move into any discussion that myself and Director Forrest are on the line as well. Brandon Forrest has been working with both the province as well as the applicants to talk about how we got to where we are today from a real estate perspective. And I believe as well, we have a representative from the Homes for Heroes Foundation with us today as well to answer any questions. So thank you very much, and happy to respond if necessary.
Good, thank you, Dr. Campbell. Sorry, Ian, can we just go back to the last slide? Or Elizabeth, whoever's doing it. Okay, yeah. Am I right in saying there is a word omitted in the second line, which it should read under section 37 of the Ontario Heritage Act to conserve the cultural heritage value?
You are correct.
Just so that it doesn't go on to council like that. And I would point out that this is a motion enacting a heritage easement agreement. And at this point, no more than that. Members, comments, any concerns there? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that, first of all, I'm extremely supportive of the great work and the initiative that Homes for Heroes are taking to look after and support unhoused veterans. And I think that's such an extremely important work. So my comment doesn't reflect any kind of negative sentiment on what we're trying to, what the Homes for Heroes are trying to achieve here. My concerns, however, are due to the fact that there was an extensive visioning process that included members of the Portsmouth district and beyond, and everybody recognized that this is beautiful landscape land with not like with large trees, and it's a beautiful park-like setting that we really wanted to preserve. Those were my comments on the dash file as well. But I just want to say that was a little bit frustrating, and I understand the complexity here because the land is owned by the province, and the city still went through a visioning process, and I understand all of that, but I have to say that it is a bit disappointing that that we really created an expectation to protect this parkland, only to turn around for it now to be developed. And this is in a way comment towards what we're trying to achieve here, because it's extremely important. You know, very, very supportive of building homes for parents, because they should, you know, Canadian vets should not be homeless at all. So, but I wonder if we could learn from this, and if staff could actually speak to perhaps what lessons we might have learned so that this doesn't happen again, because it is frustrating for residents when we thought we had a vision and only for it to be turned around and just kind of thrown out of the window kind of thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments about your dash comments, Councillor Ustav? Nope, you were just, okay.
Double muted. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, yes, can you hear you?
Yeah, no, I do want to echo and support Councillor Doherty in her comments, and I agree. We're very excited about this opportunity. I think there's some wish list that there are other locations on that property that might, you know, I feel within reach, but we certainly want to see this. I want to see this move forward, or something we'll be proud of and supportive of. My vision for it was a little better location on that property, more pastoral, more, you know, so close to the street and everything, and more, so many more possibilities. But that's, you know, that's what I thought we would eventually merge to a more ideal location within a very close area there. But it looks like that can't happen. So I just wanted to say it, and I do support Councillor Doherty's somewhat disappointment, but recognizing that we do not want to lose this opportunity either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments about your dash comments? Jennifer, do you want to answer that one?
Thank you, and through. I just want to acknowledge and thank the councillors for raising those points. I do think it is an important part of the long framing discussion that led into the ultimate selection by the province of this location. I think Councillor Doherty, you accurately reflected that despite the fact that there were previous discussions and secondary planning considerations about what the city in partnership might like to see happen here, unfortunately from the heritage consideration before us today, we were provided with the selected property from the province, and the negotiation then with the Homes for Heroes Foundation for the heritage easement agreement before you was begun. So I'm not certainly using that as a mechanism of dismissing what you referenced here, which are those previous discussions. But I did just want to say that staff have only been able to kind of work with the Homes for Heroes Foundation on consideration of the property that the province ultimately did select to sever or propose to sever from their existing parcel. Where that takes us down the line with other aspects of the property, if the province chooses to move differently, we'll have to wait and see. So I just wanted to offer that and say that we do understand, and staff certainly have heard council's concern about that through your comments. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other dash comments, at least comments on your dash comments? Seeing none then, members of the public or others wishing to make comments at this time? Madam Clerk, do we have any? I don't see any hands.
Mr. Chair, we still don't have anyone in the gallery unless Ms. Howard. I do see that Ms. Howard, who is the representative for Homes for Heroes, would like to
has a hand. Jacqueline Howard, welcome.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having Homes for Heroes before the Heritage Committee today. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to introduce myself as the Director of Planning and Development with the Homes for Heroes team. We've been working quite closely with the province as well as the city on the site selection, and we're pleased to put forward the application for heritage easement agreements. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Questions? Paul?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, one comment, and then yes, then a question. The comment is that I must say I'm disappointed to see 2 mature trees being lopped down for a parking lot. Anyway, I'll leave that comment alone. But the question being, I believe, if I remember correctly reading through it, that there were 2 other sites that were investigated and ultimately rejected. And I'm just curious what those sites were and perhaps some reasons as to why they were rejected.
Sure, maybe to touch on the parking lots comment to begin with. The plan that we have right now is conceptual. We do have a tree inventory taking place as well as a tree preservation plan that will be prepared. So that process is actually, I believe they're in the field right now. So that may result in a few tweaks to the plan. Right now, the way it's laid out, we think one of the smaller trees is going to go down, but the other we can probably tweak around to save. And we're relocating the garbage and recycling enclosure. So that tree furthest to the east, I guess that would be the south and the east on the property, shouldn't be impacted at all. So yeah, there's some wiggle room there, and we will definitely make some tweaks based on that tree inventory plan and preservation plan. And then in terms of the locations that were reviewed, the committee took a look at 3 different locations on the Heritage Provincial Campus lands. It was quite a lengthy process. It took place over several months and included engagement with a couple of third-party representatives to do a heritage impact assessment, as well as some site servicing review, and looking at previous background studies that were completed. So environmental reports, heritage, archaeological. So based on various components, a rather detailed matrix was put together. And at the end of the day, the preferred location based on future development opportunities, among others, we resulted in the location that's put forward today through this heritage easement agreement. I know Brandon is on the call here as well, if he wants to pop in and add to that in any way.
Yeah, hi there, everybody. I think the only other thing I would add more specifically as well is there was a heritage impact assessment conducted by a third-party group that also reached out to several local heritage groups in Kingston. Heritage Kingston committee was consulted. I actually don't know if I have the rationale provided for why a response wasn't submitted. But it was directed to your committee for response. Frontenac Heritage Foundation was also included, and and then Tourism Kingston and city planners were also included in that review. And in the end, it was determined from a heritage perspective that the location had a limited impact on the cultural heritage value. That was one of several considerations, but from just the heritage perspective, that process was undertaken by a consulting group. In addition, was around a lot of the timing considerations and other planning impacts to the rest of the property. There are other locations on the site that had designations for residential use. However, the timing of it making those available, particularly in the east parcel, wouldn't have aligned with the development timelines for this initiative.
Okay, thank you very much. Jackie, do you have anything else to say?
Nope, that's great.
Good. Okay, other questions then to committee, or comments or thoughts? Going. Okay, you have a motion there. Recommendation to enact a heritage easement agreement. Looking for a mover. Don Taylor, looking for a seconder. Don't all rush. Councillor Doherty, thank you very, Councillor Oosterhoff, sorry, I was looking at the wrong picture. Comments on the motion, which is probably unamendable. Don Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I just sort of had one question, which was if we're recommending to council to do this easement agreement, how does the ministry zoning order factor in? And is a lot of what is listed protectable, I guess, would be my lay question. And then the second thing I wanted to speak to is what I do like about it is the way that it sort of intangibly matches the historic use of the site in many different ways. And the report lists some of them, but in particular, the mental health and the way that it's going to be arranged and within the trees, I particularly liked, and the integration of the accessibility and recognizing community interaction, the other uses in the area that will cause interaction by the location that it is right up by the street and the sidewalk infrastructure. I just thought was also very, looking back historically at the use of the land and the mental health and looking at the current time period and knowing the number of invisible differences that people have. I just thought that holistically and the way it interacts, it performs, or it appears like it will perform very well in that location. Thank you.
Dr. Campbell, do you want to answer the first question? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, and through you. And thank you, Don. That's a really great and complex question, actually. So when we think about ministerial zoning orders, we have to think about which minister is appropriate to which level of consideration at which time. The request to enter into a heritage easement agreement comes through the Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Sport, and they are following the provincial guidelines for the disposal of provincially significant heritage properties. And in that guideline, it sort of says to the province, here's what you should do when you're taking a provincially significant land and transferring and disposing of it into the public. And one of those requirements, the province holds itself to, so this is sort of a subset in addition to the Ontario Heritage Act, is it can request to enter into statutory considerations on the property. And in this case, a heritage easement agreement was requested by the minister to fulfill those transfer obligations out of provincial control. As noted in the report, however, there are additional considerations that will come forward as part of the development of the site as intended. And that is likely to also include a zoning reconsideration or an alteration to the zoning on the property. That is something that would be subject potentially, not necessarily, but as part of that zoning consideration, there is an opportunity for an alternate minister who could use a ministerial zoning order to alter the zoning on the property to satisfy the needs of the Homes for Heroes Foundation and the development that you're seeing before you today. So relevant to our discussion of heritage, we're not seeing a ministerial order in that regard. What we're seeing is a minister requesting to dispose of the land using the established proposed guidelines for the disposal of provincial properties. But in future planning committee considerations and zoning discussions, we may see something different, but we may not as well. It may simply follow the established municipal process.
Hope that helps, Don. Complicated, I know. Other discussion on the motion which is on the floor? And seeing none, then asking you to vote in favour of recommending council to enact a heritage easement agreement on this property. Those in favour, if you can raise your hands, please. And those opposed, and I think I see all hands up, so that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Howard and Mr. Forrest, for attending. Oh, look at this. We're going to make it in an hour. Working group reports, I see none. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Emergency approvals. Who's looking after those? I'll get to questions in a moment, Don. No emergency approvals?
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, my understanding is that there were no emergency approvals for this one.
Okay. Motions. I don't believe there are any notices of motion. Other business. Don, you had a hand up.
Well, maybe I missed something, but Was there not a report from the review working group on the agenda, or did we miss this meeting?
Not that came in my package.
Okay, I thought there would be, but
Okay, I imagine it'll come next month.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, thank you. Correspondence, you'll notice 2 pieces from the Ontario Heritage Trust, Heritage Matters newsletter, and the year in review. Next meeting, February the 16th, almost spring by then. How about that? And I believe that's it. So I look for a motion to adjourn. Don, seconded by Councillor Doherty. Don Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Doherty. Those in favour, it's automatic anyway. Thank you all so much. 10:25, let it be noted. Isn't that something for a change for us? Good. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you all who've been taking part.